Hello folks, Bulletproof.com here. Our team is marching with a big series of modern playtest sessions. Basically, I really wanted to playtest as many matchups as possible for my Abzan company deck, and also there is a thing that I would have a open locally coming up, and then a modern champs, all of that within few weeks. So you would witness a lot of modern playtest action. Basically, this one is against Jeskai control with Resto Kiki package and Wall of Elements and Snapcasters and stuff like that. That is on the top half of your screen, and at the bottom is my Abzan company deck. I already play tested against Timur Delver and Scapeshift, and I wish to continue with quite wide range of archetypes. Sometimes maybe taking some other deck, not just Abzan company. I might see how Bent Flash fares against Eldrazi decks and something else that reason in the lights of the latest Pro Tour. So here I'm just fixing my deck because it was weird to see West Resurgence main deck. It turns out during that playtest session my build featured two of those, main deck and Archangel plus Spike Feeder in the sideboard, because I saw a deck list that I liked. But today I finished reading Arielak's article from SCG Premium about the deck. I highly recommend that article. Such works actually make SCG Premium a very worthy thing to pay for. He basically covered almost every nuance about the deck. In a moment I'll fix the location of cards and on my side of the screen. Basically I started with Forest into Noble Heroic. He responded with just an Islet and pass. Then my second turn was Plains and attempting a Voice of Resurgence, which quickly gets spell snared. So that didn't go through. I think what I'll end up playing ultimately will be close to the list of Arielaks, although in his article he actually mentioned some of the dissatisfaction with some of the card choices, but also his build is very tuned for new metagame, which I think in local but big tournaments will still be a different case, and I will have to gun against more conservative metagame, because one of the reasons is that the new Eldrazi deck, especially the one Channel Fireball played, is damn expensive, and for those who didn't have some of the parts of that deck beforehand, it'll be a very huge obstacle to actually build that deck from scratch. It's a really huge investment. Okay, Jeskai control just continued with the tapped Steam Vents and passed. But what he was trying to tell me that his hand wasn't that great, and that happens with Jeskai variants from time to time. In the meantime, Abzan company deck is, I would say, quite consistent, and it's much more streamlined, much more proactive, I would say. I really like the Jeskai Kiki control version over other types of Jeskai right now, because you have a very big control package which should be good on the metagame, and then you have a combo finish and you have a lot of value. Wall of Moments, drawing cards, resto, resetting that, or Snapcaster, or Vendilion Click, and then obviously combos off with a Kiki. So I fetch here, grab another forest. Still one basic left in the deck, a swamp, in case my opponent draws white mana. Because I should be at 19 here, I will remind him to monitor life totals in a moment. So start off with Viserys here. I don't know exactly why in this sequence I wanted to play both of these now on my turn, while he doesn't have that many things he can do here. So Viserys here, and then into Collector Company. It hits kitchen things and a something else. I find it hard to figure it out right. Okay, it's another bird. So basically, if you would think that like you can't see something clearly, well, Graveyard probably won't be able to, unfortunately. I tried my best to make everything visible and without glares, but that corner with the Graveyard, well, can't do much there. So I'm missing just one combo piece here, and because he's a kind of creature heavy deck compared to classical Jeskai control versions, so he doesn't run Master of the main deck, at least. Although I think in the face of a bunch of Eldrazi decks and a lot of aggro, I think even that deck with a bunch of Wall of Omens in it should have at least one Supreme Verdict main deck, and definitely more additional copies in the sideboard. I think I'm trying to scavenge news out here. Yes, indeed. He didn't get his third land on time. You know, he doesn't have white, so that really limits options what he can do. Not attacking with the Viserys here, but Kitchen thanks to Exalted from Noble Heroic, becomes a 4/3, so even if he flashes in the Snapcaster here, my thanks is gonna be safe and he won't have to persist. Scavenge is also representing a big threat here. So things are looking great right now here. Yeah, that's the tapped Celestial Colonnade here, so he gets a white, but it comes into play tapped. Basically, we have a large team, but cards are fluctuating between players quite a bit. And I wanted to take the opportunity to play test against Jeskai this early, to have more experience and more feeling about the matchup. Because this friend of mine might shift away from Jeskai control, and it's a matchup which I really want to test, because I think that that will be a control deck of choice for many people. To go for Collected Company here, end of turn, and that resolved. And I think now what I'm doing end of turn is just sacrificing some mana dorks in order to dig for the third piece. Because he could have like a lightning bolt or something, or a mana leak. Okay, I hit I think a Spellskite and a Wolford, so that made me actually eager to eat the mana dorks. But I should have probably kept at least the Birds of Paradise here, because that would have given me double white and also black mana. But I kinda went greedy because I have the Sorcerer in play, and now actually only Mana Leak does something here. Bolt doesn't, because I have a Spellskite in play. So I was really digging for unoffensive here, and I somehow forgot that basically I didn't have double white because I fetched the basics So I think I drew an offensive here, but couldn't quite cast it. I have a bunch of dorks in my graveyard, so Ooze is gonna start kicking for a lot of damage soon. Now he has 3 mana, he has White Sword, so that's worrisome. He goes for Wall of Omens here to try to dig for 4th land, or a bolt or something else. I suppose that was a top deck Flooded Strands, good for him. He's trying to slowly get back into the game, but he's at 14. So it's not clear yet, like what's coming ahead for either of us. Sacred Foundry untapped. So now he can do a lot of stuff, basically, unless he doesn't get an answer, like a counter spell for something I have. Second, well, okay, so that's interesting. On the other hand, the fun part here is that even if I go infinite life, he can still kill me with Restoration and Kiki. So that's the good part about this version of Jeskai. And the turn, I just think I exile a couple of creatures or something from my own graveyard to put a couple of counters on my Scavenging Ooze, which I'm not sure should be main deck. That's the interesting part. And that card is not super amazing right now, unless Snapcaster Mage decks will rise again, which is really hard to expect. He's at 11. He doesn't want to take a bunch of damage from the Scavenging Ooze, so he blocks with one of the walls. That was a pretty stupid mistake on my part to eat a bunch of mana dorks, but I scribed to the bottom pretty unexciting cards, so I suppose that wasn't terrible, but probably misplay. Because there are fetches after all in the deck and so on. Don't worry, but the Praxis is just lands basically. Let's just say he has like any mana he may need of any color right now, including Cascade Bluffs. As I said, I just wanted to use the opportunity to playtest this matchup, because the other prominent decks in Modern right now, like Affinity, Burn, Zoo variants, including Death Shadows aggro, are the decks that I've more or less prepared, playtested Affinity and Burn and Zoo for quite a few times, so I know how to sideboard against them and how to tune my deck against them. But while I did playtest against Classic Jeskai, which was still there before the bannings, it's something I haven't really played super much against. Okay, I attempt an offensa. He goes for he attempts a path on one of my guys. I take 2 path targets Spellskite. I eat it to Seer to Scry. Keep it on top. I believe it was Corda calling, but then something nasty still happens, so an offensa is still on the stack. Now there is no Spellskite also, so he has 1 white still available. That's Colonnade on the right, and when his lands, So now things can get kind of tricky here. So he's trying to arrange his mana in a proper way. He's still at 11, I'm at 19 after the spell's kite thingy. Yeah, his camp froze for a second. No, maybe he can just stay that still. I don't know. Anyways, Anafanzo was still on the stack, so I expected him to have something here for a for my combo. Threatening here. He goes for Electrolyze on the Visceracer plus 1 damage to me. I get to scry. That doesn't fizz Electrolyze because I take 1 damage, so I should be at 8 in here. By the way, he was so concentrated on his game, he forgets my life total, but I'm telling you now, in case there are any misunderstandings, so that you don't have to point out those moments. He drew for Electrolyze, so no Visceracer, no combo. Go to combat. He just apparently drew another path for my ooze, which is a bigger threat right now, and he's just gonna block the kitchen things with the remaining wall of omens. So I did basically no damage whatsoever. Unfortunately, with this second path, while I had Cord on my top deck because of the scry from the Seer, there is no Seer here, so I cannot sacrifice my dude, so that path doesn't work. The problem here is not about searching for land, it's about that if it resolves I have to shuffle my deck anyway. I can decline to search for a land, but I still have to shuffle. This is how we drew it up. Because I can decline to search for lands, but I believe I still have to shuffle my deck. So Cord is gone for my top deck. I still have 2 combo pieces in play, but he does have some gas, and he knows that like 1 combo piece and then he's toasted. Okay, attempting to combo once again, attempting another Visceracer here with me some 2 parts in play. Now he just goes and bolts my Seer, bolts my Anafenza in response to the Seer, so that I don't get to scry, etc. That's a bit unfortunate, but what can you do? Traditionally, Jeskai control variants have been a tough matchup for this deck, but with the right configuration and a few live draws, it can be much better. So basically, drawing companies is one of the recipes to win in this matchup. Also Voices, a card that I'm not really willing to cut entirely out of my 75. And in this particular build I would have 2 paths to Visceracer, 2 Voices in main deck, and Archangel plus Foon in the sideboard. Snap Bolt takes out, I believe, Seer in response to Anafenza. So I'm drawing and casting combo piece after combo piece, but everything just dies or gets exiled. Really insane comeback from him. Failing to draw companies is one of the things that made this game very easy for him to get back into. Also, me eating all the birds and cutting myself off double whites so early was pretty stupid. Attempt and acquire the calling for free at his upkeep, with the ability to pay for a mana leak. He goes for Resto, Blink and Snap, Flashback in a Path to Exile onto, I believe, an Offensa. I think it should be better to just path away things here. But it's debatable which one is more important to excel here. So that was in response to Chord, and then the Chord resolves for free to get a creature with cost 3 or less. But then there is a challenge what to take. I can take Witness, get back like one of the combo pieces, like well, I can take Seer here. I can't take Chord and cast it here again, so that's a problem. Luckily for me, I'm casting it not at his end but at his upkeep, so I'm locking his plays for this turn at least. So the hope is to just get back Chord, I guess. Well, I can get back a company, I think. Yeah, I believe there was one in my graveyard this game, and he's not gonna be able to do anything about this. Or did I? Wait, what? No, I suppose I did it during my turn. Yeah, I suppose I did it during my turn. And then got banished immediately by him drawing Kiki with Resto Angel in play. Yeah, I was like going pretty dry here in this game. Not exciting flips. Could have basically gone for the combo if I didn't sacrifice all the birds. But I wouldn't only gone for Infinite Life, which his deck can beat with his own infinite combo. I would get to scry a bunch of times and perhaps get a company on top or something of value. Pretty good comeback from him. Pretty fine sequencing. Not really optimal play from me, but it's been a long time I've played against any Jeskai in Modern. One FNM recently doesn't count because it was a pretty different version with Pyromancers and Monastery Mentors. After sideboard I get a lot of help, extra voice, at that point Burnt on First Sender, which I think I'm gonna take out away from the deck. It's not about the bolts or call against commands, whose couple spells kite my deck. Bolts and such are not such a huge deal. Call against command is not a very common card right now in the format. Things have shifted a bit in the metagame, and as Erlich said, yeah, it's kind of obvious but important to point out again. Force Thunder now doesn't help against Tron's mass removal, which is now Kozilek's Return. Kozilek's Return is colorless, so protection from red stuff like doesn't really help. So there is that, and the deck has a bunch of tools against Burn and Zudax already, so Force Thunder is not a real necessity with the right configuration of the deck. With a couple spell kites, or even sometimes free, as are played, and I believe Logan Mize as well. No, I think Logan played 2 at the Pro Tour. Anyways, with 2 Wolf Roots, 2 Spells Kites, etc., it's hard for Burn to get through. The only thing that matters is the Eidolon, and just a bunch of 1 mana free to face kind of cards. But if you're playing in your sideboard to main deck Archangel plus Spike Theater, you get 2 extra lifelinks creatures, so that helps. Also, if you play with Tidehollow Scholar or Sin Collector, those cards help in the matchup quite a bit because they give you a body and nuke a card from them. Schooler is not exactly a tougher one, but the thing is that you play it, if they don't kill it, you get a body to block. If they decide to kill it, they have to spend the burn spell instead of your on it instead of your life total, so you're really happy to see that, because you can easily go on top of that deck. Okay, game 2 here after sideboard. Basically what I brought in, I think, was the Force Under, Third Voice, because there were 2 main deck in that session. Here I'm starting off with Fetch for Shockland and the Viserys here. My hand, I think, was kinda mediocre. Basically, despite Bolts and Electrolyze, you don't want to keep all the mana dorks against that deck because they do have the combo, so there's always the possibility of dying on turn 5. But against more conservative Jeskai builds, cutting the mana dork or so is definitely fine, because then you would face more mass removal. What else I brought? Didn't bring in Scholars. If I would had Sin Collectors in that configuration, I would definitely bring that in. One of the benefits of playing Sin Collector with Scholar. He goes for a like one of the, oh yeah, that's Scalding Tarn. His turns are coming from a friend very soon. I just attacked with the Seer. He goes to actually 18. I'm in 17 because of the fetch into shock. So I didn't have a turn to play here just yet. I suppose it was just like Path to Exile. Not sure if I should have kept that hand, but it had appropriate lands, something to do early, trumps like Chord and company. Not sure how many chords you're supposed to keep in this matchup. Probably not more than 3. Maybe just keep 2, because even with Vol of Fruits, that card is damn slow, and it's just a 1-for-1 must at a time. If you take Witness with it, I'm not a fan. Not a fan. Some people might argue that this is the way to grind this matchup, but I'd rather draw a Collected Company, of course. Fetch for Plains here, because now I have a double green, double white, black source as well. So attempting a Kitchen Finks here, which gets mana leaked, kinda sad for me. Continuing to bash. Now life totals are correct, by the way. This is not a super bad situation for me yet, but now he did hit a 3rd land unlike in the previous game, so there's that. Really hoping that he doesn't have a counter here. My goal with Witness here is to grab a land back, a fetch to be exact. so that I can cast my companies and so on. I believe I had something like 2 in my hand at this point. Now he's trying to stick a click and play. He targets himself, that's the funny part, so it sounds like his hand is not particularly amazing. So click gets into play, it gets to click him. He puts Shadow out on bottom, a card that we actually discussed a little bit at this point about the implications, so we realized that it would have been pretty cool for him to Shadow out me on my second turn and deprive me basically of a land drop that turn and potentially screw me up long term. Before he gets to take his turn back, I take some damage, fetch up a shock land, cast a path on his click. So I'm going down to 13, but his deck doesn't have a huge amount of burn, some of it, but at 13 I'm not overly concerned. Especially if I get to catch him with some companies here. Lays land number 5. We cannot quite distinguish what it was, but his mana base is quite stable, I would say. He is gonna get all the missing lands, some of which are actually his, off of our mutual friends, and then join me in the All Local Open event, and then also at the Modern Champs. Although I'm curious what deck he'll actually end up playing. Looks like he was locked on this one. Seer and Witness drop him down to 13 here. And I just passed the turn with obvious company coming up. He fetches at the end, drops to 12. I'm really wondering what he's up to. Has a few cards in hand. Not that many, I believe. I suppose he was sandbagging that Shadow Depth that he cycled with the Click so that he can fizzle a Chord Calling of mine later on. But I don't know, I don't think he should have waited. He definitely should have cast Mana Leak to counter that kitchen things there. That was a good play. So basically I'm attempting an company here at his upkeep. Playing around him, top decking a counter spell, and then at the, on his turn an upkeep so that he actually becomes somewhat tapped before I get to take my turn back. Because there was a Cascade Bluffs, it's a very easily castable Cryptic command here to counter and draw. Draws from the Cryptic and then draws for the turn. Another land, so he can still represent a bunch of things here. I believe that was a Scalding Tarn, so he could represent a Bolt here as well. Horizon Canopy joins the party, bashing with both creatures, because then if he just goes for a Bolt or anything, I can always respond with a company. Give the turn back again. I stop him at the upkeep. Suggest another company. Cannot eat Canopy here for an extra draw, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. This is kind of bad. I guess he's afraid of me flipping a spell cut off of that company, of which there are two main deck, and I definitely kept them in. So he's gonna he attempted a path on my seer. I ate it to scry. I saw an offensive on top, so that I have something for sure coming off this company, which resolved. So looking at my top 6 here, bringing in I believe a kitchen things and an offensive, dropping a bolster counter onto Eternal Witness. So I have some nice board state over here, but still his upkeep, so he can definitely just drop some paths and bolts and snapcasters over here. So there is that. Worst things. Worst, I still get to cantrip with the canopy. Even if he deals with something, most likely something will be left on my side, and he's at 9, so I'm pressuring him kinda nicely here. Something like a Rest Angel here could be annoying, that's for sure. Another path onto an offensive. He's really fearing that card way more than things here for some reason. The problem I have with that plan is that if he paths things, he then later can just bolt away an offensive. So I'm really surprised by that target. I think in each similar situation he should rather path kitchen things, because his burn spells are just much worse against that creature than a random grizzly bears with some upsides, unless I draw the whole combo. Dropping the voice first before he gets to do something. So if he like kills one of my guys here, I'm fine, because I believe I had a good follow-up here. I take 1 pain from Canopy, but I get to cast a Linvala, which stops his combo. Basically it just shuts down Kiki here. Linvala on the stack, he is thinking about it, seriously thinking about it, and that makes me very confused. With the voice already in play, I'm really puzzled. I am really puzzled here. Linvala lost a lot of appeal because of the twin gun from Modern, but it's still pretty nice against, say, Affinity and in the mirror match, but it's kinda dead against Eldrazi decks. So there's a chance I will cut her from my sideboard. There is quite a big chance. So I get 2 elemental tokens because of the Snapcaster Manlake on Linvala, and that makes me really surprised. I still have a live voice and kitchen things, so it is really weird. If he gets a verdict here, I still get 2 creatures left after it. For this reason I actually just attack with the Witness here. because I want to keep things there without a counter in case he draws into a verdict, which is about the only card that could realistically save him here. He cannot quite combo just yet here, and he's forced to play stuff on his turn now. Basically, what I think his plan was to get verdict down and then clean up after it with a bolt or something for the token or kitchen things. Guess for Volvomans, I suppose, hoping to to draw a missing part of his puzzle to stay alive. But I don't see many cards really helping him out here. I'm not really seeing that. But he gets to do Snapcaster Path Voice here, which is really not that great. He could have just left Linvala, let Linvala resolve, and then say go Snapcaster Path on a, let's say, Voice or Witness or whatever. He's just in 6 lands, so it's really hard to find what can save him here. In order to make it really hard for him, cast a company, then I have also a Thin Hunter in hand for something like Volvomans. Go get a I believe a Spellskite, I think another kitchen things or something, and then cast a Thin Hunter for Volvomans. So attack with 2 elemental tokens, which are now 6/6, and the kitchen things. He's forced to block both the tokens, and he's barely still alive. So this is the power of voice. They can path it, they can counter it, but if it sticks in play, then it's really painful for control decks. It's really painful for them there. Really wondering how he could possibly survive here. He throws for the turn. One of the things he could do is to perhaps cast a Cryptic Tap My Team, but then he would be only left with 3 mana. Even if he gets a land drop here, he realizes that there is barely any way out of this, scoops it up. I think here his sequencing was quite weird and odd. So I would say this game was a good example of probably not how to try to trick Abzan Company, and also this was a showcase of how voice is broken against blue decks and what kind of stuff it could lead to. Okay, on to another post-sideboard game here. Basically this matchup is quite tricky, but it's not as tricky as it turns out as, for example, against Blue Moon, which is also coming. That and against Blue-Red Eldrazi and against Colorless Eldrazi. The format in which I did that, I mean, in terms of outlook, may not be something you would appreciate super much, but the actual content and the commentary might be of value. I'll still address these on a lot of people's mind right now, and this Abzan company is very well positioned against those stacks, so I suppose you may want to look into those playtest matches. And as for now, let's continue against Jeskai Kiki control. I think this is a game where he mulligan at least down at 6. Some colonnade, I believe. My turn 1 is just a tapped Temple Garden. No mana Dirk. It's a thing that's just Scalding Tarn and a pass from him. Bit awkward with the lands, but well, so be it. Expected some sort of counterspell. So fitted him a Jeskai, which is probably fine to start with instead of like some Grizzly Bears with some abilities, because if this guy would have resolved, let's say he had like bolts or helixes in hand or paths, then my future guys are protected from targeted removal. Yeah, he had to take 3 damage in the process while casting that mana leak in there. Draws for the turn. Yeah, my hand is not really that explosive or anything. Don't really have much against opponent's verdicts, so voices and things help. There was just a wall of omens on his part. Third land, but it's a 2-drop, it's a voice, which apparently gets, I don't know, he just fetched, I think. Both fetch. He goes for a tapped Sacred Foundry, so voice actually resolved. Something that never apparently happens against blue, and somehow everything just gets bursted with bolts or burst lightning or countered. Blue one has way more space for control cards. So play that matchup. It's coming up in another tape. Okay, he got a path for the voice, that's cool. And Blue Moon has this nasty Anger of the Gods, and the notion is that you don't really need Burnt and Forged Sand during the sideboards of this stack, because you can beat Burn anyway, and then you can't beat Kozilek's Return. On the other hand, Tron doesn't seem like a great deck nowadays after the Pro Tour, so it's kind of weird. Okay, he's clicking. So targeting me at resolves because I don't really care so much. I think he does that on after my draw step, so that's where we are right now. So seize the lands, Fitness, Anafenza, and Triple Chord. For some reason decides to cycle Anafenza. I don't know why he just so paranoid about that card. I think the card to actually take away here is probably Witness. Depending on his hand, I might actually, in his shoes, just keep all of it. Okay, so what I do now is just Witness to get a fetch and to get a land. So in 5 mana I can cast that on the spell's cut. He goes for beatdown with click. I'm at 15, he's at 14 at this point. Passes the turn back. Another land. He's fetching up, goes to 13. I believe that's at my end or something. Yeah. And taps keys. Then on his upkeep, I'm attempting a chord for free. It gets cryptic to do. Commanded. Counters and draws for the turn. Because I cast a chord at his upkeep. He lays lands. Bashes with the click. I'm down to 12. Casting Seer here. Might as well. If that resolves with well, it was spells card in hand. Now I can't quite double chord here. I have 4 green on the Witness. So let's say Witness for 2-drop, like Malara or something. I cannot chord again. So that's a prob. But he now has to have counters, because this click, even though it's a 4-turn clock right now, considering he doesn't have bolts, and I have spells get in play. Tapping chord for 2 here, because this way I can play around Mana Lake. I can't block the click anyway. And I can't block the Colonnade either. He goes for a Cryptic. Okay, this is again at his upkeep. He goes for a Cryptic, counter and draw, I suppose. This is what I expected from him. He has Cascade Bluff, so, well, anyway. Has the triple blue here, either way around. Keeps mana to represent anything, which costs 2 or less. Considers for a while what to do with the second one, and decides to actually bounce spells cut back to my hands. A weird play. It might be actually ultimately correct, but didn't look to me like that. Well, Helix, which goes for Seer, actually, which is kind of weird. I guess he's afraid of something like Company, but I don't know. I think he could have held on this, and then I don't know, maybe just not cast it on my turn if nothing serious happens, and then just try to see what's going on and maybe finish me off with that Helix. Because I'm at 9, if that Helix would hit face I'd be at 6, and that's like bolt plus a click or something like that, or just 1 Snapcaster. Now I have Archangel Phone, so use this opportunity while he was stepped out to land this free for life linking Angel with flying, of course. So now his click is kind of locked down. unless he hits another burn spell. But then it's a 2 for 1. Not the best exchange. Okay, now he has 7 mana available to him on his turn. There are a number of things he can do here. He's counting his options available. All the time we were actually on Skype, chatting as well, so we had a nice conversation. And verbally he expressed some sadness after seeing that angel. Not exactly sure, should have asked him to be 100% certain and then remember it now when I'm commentating. I think if one of his lands would have been colonnades, the proxied one, he would probably attack there. So I suppose it wasn't one of them. I attempt a kitchen, well, not the kitchen things, Spellskite, to see if the coast is clear. I'm at 6, it's a pretty dangerous territory. But attacking here seems kinda dangerous as well. On the other hand, he can easily throw into sort of combination of double bolts. So I decided to just go for it. Cast a chord. With Spellskite on play, once the chord resolves, there is not much he can do. I'm at 6, but so be it. So I chord out Spike Feeder and explain to him that like this is time to do something. Otherwise, things are gonna be pretty bad for him. On the other hand, he's not quite dead yet. If he would have like Resto at the end and then Kiki on his turn, because Spellskite doesn't work against Kiki. But I do have also a path in hand which I can cast, so I don't know. He needed to have the combo and something to protect it, like a Dispel or a Spell Pierce at least. But instead, well, it's another land, so he's not really drawing anything. And that's how it ended. Could have ended pretty bad for me if it would have been combo plus a counter spell for the path. Instead, I did my combo and not just infinite life, but my guys were infinite, so unless there was a verdict or something, he would have died. So he was hoping for a top deck, and top deck didn't happen, so he didn't draw a verdict. Okay guys, thank you, bye bye.